Yes,
Welcome,
yes.
welcome
Welcome.
to the Bullshirt podcast, episode 572.
It feels like it. I noticed the new platform doesn't auto number them like that, which is disappointing because I can't count that high.
Take off your
Well,
shoes.
the fact that the numbers aren't there, it's kind of hurts the audience because like, how are they going to know what order to listen to them in to really get the
To,
overarching story that
right, to understand
reporting?
canon. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know, man. I think that's Zencaster not thinking it through. Not thinking it
I'm never
through.
going to know about Mark and Uncle Steve.
Yeah, good old Uncle Steve. What are you gonna
Well, we should say hello to the new guards at Guantanamo Bay.
do?
Hello, new guards at Guantanamo Bay.
And the 3 listeners down from 3.5 from last month. It's one thing I don't like. I don't like that you can't. I'm sure there's a system out there to do it to see like what your. I know you can do streams. I think, or at least Pinecast used to show you how many streams you had in a month, how many episodes. I don't know about Zencaster.
I don't know. It's 2023. My GeoCities website could tell me how many visitors I had.
Man,
There's gotta be a way.
GeoCities. Fucking what was the other? Angel Fire.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Back when the internet was cool. The internet's not cool anymore.
The flaming GIF text was super cool.
Fuck yeah, dude.
3D flaming gift text.
Under construction image.
Absolutely. Listen to the robot scream while you were dialing up into the internet. But it was new back then, and it wasn't as fucking abused and dialed in to screw with the human psyche like it is now.
There was an IQ barrier for entry.
Maybe that's what it was. I never thought about that. I never thought about that. It was mostly nerds and people with high IQs. Now everybody is fucking online all the time, everywhere. That is a valid point, sir.
Can we revert that?
Yeah, roll it back to an earlier code revision of human history.
Make it harder to get online. We were talking to somebody the other day about this video I saw. It was kind of interesting. And it was this guy talking about how things have gotten more expensive as far as like housing and food. And he's showing the numbers from like, I think 1970 till now. And, like housing and shit's gone up, 30%, all this stuff. But then he's showing how wages have gone up, and it's like 12% or something. And don't quote me on these numbers. But the point is that
they're not keeping up with the rise in.
Not even close. Yeah,
wow.
Not even close. It's like a 5-to-1, ratio of cost of living versus, wages. But then he showed the birth rate between like 1970 and now, and it's declined from like 3 to 0.75 or something like that. And it reminded me, there was a show on, I think it's been done a couple times, but I think on Prime or Netflix, I keep wanting to say Euphoria, and that's not right. That's that HBO show, but it was about.
You're thinking about Tim and Eric.
The Tim and Eric show, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a show about they created a virus so that everyone would go get a vaccine, and then the vaccine was sterilizing people. And I remember it came out during COVID, and before the show, it would show this black screen that said, this was a work of fiction.
JK.
Yeah. And it's from an old, I think it's a graphic novel, actually. And I think there's more of them. And they even did one like Japanese or British or somebody did one. Utopia. I think it was called Utopia. And it's actually really good. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's neat. But I thought, man, what if cranking out, the high prices and everything is a way, we were just like joking about like conspiracy theories, is a way of getting the population down, right? Because people won't have kids if they can't afford them. And we were talking and I stopped for a second and I went, wait, no, stop. I said, my conspiracy theory's all wrong. Dude says, why? I said, because stupid people are still going to have kids, right? Like they're not going to stop because, oh no, I can't afford a child. Stupid people going to keep fucking, going to keep having kids.
Well, you
you
would
know.
create the idiocracy effect.
Well, yeah, and that's
What
I kind of thought about that, right?
because in the very, very, very beginning of Idiocracy, they were talking about who was reproducing, and you
Mm-hmm.
had these smart people who either did not have kids or had one kid,
Mm-hmm.
and meanwhile, you had people that were, how shall we say, intellectually challenged that were screwing like wildfire.
Morons. Yeah. Yeah, so there's and that was kind of the joke that we got to finally, is that, right, they were trying to create an idiocracy with by economic means. So I love sitting around
It's
thinking
not
up
an
conspiracy theories.
it's not an invalid theory.
I mean, if you, I don't know. My problem is that because of the people that tend to believe in conspiracy theories, I tend to push against them. But then some days, yeah, you're just like, this
Well,
isn't.
more people believe in them than you think. It's just the people that go around telling everyone their beliefs loudly or tend to be the fucking morons.
Yeah, you're right. And
Well,
it was Adam that actually told me that the first time. And I think being you're not, are you a millennial or are you
Yeah, I'm millennial.
you're millennial?
Technically. Yeah.
Okay. And so he's got a different perspective, and that was back when we first started this podcast before it became the shit show that it is. The point is that me and Doug were both Gen Xers, and our buddy Rich is a proud Gen Xer, and
He's the most Gen Xer.
he's the most Gen Xer from 1987. And the back and forth was, Gen Xers kind of not versus millennials, but just the different perspectives. And you may not think that it's that different, but it really is. And Adam growing up with the internet the way that he did, I mean, I grew up before the internet. I was sitting here the other day. I was just tired from packing and I just needed to lay down, and I went to grab my phone or something. I was like, Jesus Christ. I don't even remember. There was a time where you had no idea what was going on unless you turned on the TV. You didn't know where your friends were. You didn't know what your friends were doing unless they called you and told you, and there was no Facebook, and you weren't keeping tabs on everybody. I was like, God, there's a part of me that misses that.
Back in the good old days. Oh,
I
God,
mean,
I'm turning into one of those people.
Exactly, right? In the good old days. So it was Adam that pointed out to me one time, because this has been a year or so ago. I was just frustrated with the world, and I was like, Jesus, I just hate everybody. Everybody's stupid, and everybody's all these. There's just, they say all these stupid things and everything. And Adam said, "Yeah, but is that everybody really?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "You sure it's not just like the fucking loud minority of stupid people?" And he said, "Because you believe things, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you go spout it off every time you get a chance, anywhere, let alone the internet?" I said, "No." And he said, "Why is that?" "Because I'm not stupid." He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, okay." So there is something to be said about that, right? The conspiracy theorists that just lose their shit, and it's hard to listen to them and take them seriously. And I think it kind of numbs you to the thought process. But then there's a there's a conspiracy theory that says the ubiquitous they
Them.
them do that on purpose for that very reason, right? They let, because people say, well, if this was a real conspiracy, the government would shut that guy up. But if he doesn't have any really concrete proof, and nowadays I think getting concrete proof is even more difficult than it ever was, because people have Photoshop, people can do AI videos now. You can print anything, so like newspaper documents. I mean, you can fake anything nowadays.
Like corporate press releases.
Like corporate press releases, yeah, or people's IM messages. You can, since everything's digital and you can fake everything. I think it's harder now to get people to believe anything than than it was 50 years ago, you know?
You also got the people that just deny reality and choose to believe whatever they think or feel.
Yeah, I grew up in a town that was bathed in that, you know? I think we all grew up in small towns. So I think none of us uh, haven't seen that before, you know?
Yeah, it's just the difference was the good old, as you want to, as you know, as they're known, the good old days. In the good old days, when a motherfucker was crazy spouting his beliefs, it was on some random street corner, and all you had to do was make sure you stood outside this particular person's visual range, because whoever they could get to even glance their direction
Lock eyes.
counted as engagement, and they would go on an apeshit tirade. But now, you know, it's the internet. You can put the shit up on Twitter or Facebook, and it's everywhere. And if it's some outlandish shit that no reasonable person would believe, but you have people out there who are a little fringe, who it reinforces a confirmation bias they have, they will take it and run with it.
Yeah, you can find an audience on the internet, right? For fucking anything, you can find an audience.
It offers a soapbox for people that don't need a soapbox.
Yes, it does.
Well, it also offers them the connection with other fucking crazy people.
Yes.
Like before, you could be like, man, I wanna fuck a dog, and everyone would be like, that's fucking weird. You're crazy, and you'd be like, okay, yeah, you're right. And now you're like, I want to fuck a dog, and you get online and there's a subreddit r/IfuckDogs, and then you get on the Facebook group and there's 3,000 people on there just telling you it's fucking cool to do, and you're like, fuck yeah, yeah, this is my
how to do it, where to do it, how to get away with it legally,
the whole fucking instruction manual.
And then there's Tumblr.
And then there's Tumblr, and there's 4chan. Yeah, and you're not wrong, and I think that's I've had this debate with people so many times about, people say, oh, the internet's evil, you know, mobile phones, cell phones are evil. I don't believe technology can inherently be evil. I really don't. I think the internet, Twitter, for instance, and I mean, Twitter's been in the news like crazy because of Elon putting that B-52 right into the fucking ground, which is sad. And the reason that I say that it's sad, and I could create a conspiracy theory about this too, we've got to start that webpage, is that, think about some of the things that have come out because of Twitter, like political, coups in other countries. France, God, it's been a minute ago. France was having all the like riots and all that shit, and you didn't hear much about it on the news, but it was all over Twitter, because it gave people the ability to pull out their cell phone and take pictures of shit and cast it out to the world. And listen, I do believe that Twitter was repressing things that it didn't like. There's a part of me that would argue that as a private company, they have that right. I would like to see social media companies handled a little more like news agencies and be put under some of the rules and laws that they have to abide by. But
which news agencies would that be?
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, fair enough. Nowadays, it's not. But the thing is that content is being. Can you? I don't think that the social media platforms themselves should be allowed to repress anything. But you also can't make them liable, because that content is being created by other people. They're not creating the content, right? Zuckerberg's not out there pulling up news stories and writing shit. Other people are. But yeah, do I believe that they repressed shit back during the elections and stuff? Yeah, I do. And I don't agree with it. But I think Twitter has done a lot of good in the sense of becoming this platform. Like I said, I saw so many things over the years where you didn't hear about it until it popped on Twitter. Oh shit, there's a war going on that nobody fucking knew about somehow. but it's on Twitter, and now it's gaining momentum, right?
That was the thing that was valuable about Twitter, because prior to that, and before Elon bought it in the whole 9 yards, and then started doing weird stuff with it, it was more than anything else. There was a lot of reporters, news agencies, and everything else. They were all following each other. So
Mm-hmm.
what it worked like was like social media, but more. While there was, you had your celebrities, you've got your
Sure.
Kardashians, you've got your what have
Yeah.
you, have
All your
people
fluff.
following,
Yeah.
but its function more or less, other than standard internet bullshit and hey, look at my pictures, was for news media to more or less be tapped into everything other than just your standard AP newswire, because
Mm-hmm.
when something started trending on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
it got the attention of news agencies.
Right.
Prior to Donald Trump becoming president, how much shit did you hear in the news about him and fucking Rosie O'Donnell? Just fucking out. I mean, something that realistically nobody would give a shit about,
Right.
other than the people that were following Trump or following Rosie O'Donnell. That's why you heard about those stories in the news, because it gained enough traction on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
and all the news agencies were tied into it. If it was a fucking slow news day, hey, let's scroll and see what's on Twitter. Oh, there's this Trump O'Donnell feud.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put some of that shit on there.
Yeah, I think that there were some really, like I said, I think there were some really powerful things that happened via Twitter, or like you said, people became aware of because of Twitter. And so I could start a conspiracy theory that the Illuminati had Musk buy it and run it into the ground, so that no more coups and political uprisings can be recorded. Um, and what he's doing, when he first bought it, I was like, okay, cool. And then that's all I can say. It's just, what are you doing, dude? You're taking a platform. He went in and he cleaned house, and I believe from the reports that I heard that they probably needed to. I think they were. I think that they were bulked up on employees, right? But he went fucking overboard, and now he's just driving it into the fucking ground. And there was no need to do that. You could have come in, bought it, trimmed up a little fat, and not repressed anything, because he says that's why he bought it, was to make this platform where nothing was repressed.
It's impossible, dude. Like, how many people are gonna want to fucking advertise next to like a Nazi post?
Right. And that's the thing, right? Is that I believe in free speech very much. I do. But right, like a Nazi post or something, there are some things that do need to be repressed and not allowed to grow.
Yeah, take that shit to Truth Social where it belongs.
Well, look at this kind of like a factory. You've got a factory that produces widgets, and that factory that produces widgets makes about $500 million a year, we'll say. And when you look at it, and you decide you want to buy it, and the business should theoretically be worth about $5 or $6 billion, making on that 500 million bucks a year. But there was some buzz around something, and as opposed to the $5 or $6 billion, you fuck up and wind up paying 11.5 for it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and you do this, and you financed it as a leveraged buyout, as opposed to they walk in there, plump down a large chunk of cash, and pay for it outright. If you buy that thing in a leveraged buyout, depending upon what the terms are of the loan, it can get really interesting. So Musk bought the thing on a loan, and I think the interest alone on the loan is more than $1 billion a year.
Jesus.
I think it's like a billion and a half. So as soon as he signed the paper, he more or less put himself in the hole because, in that scenario we were talking about earlier where the business makes $500 million a year, well, if you're paying $650 million a year in interest payments, you see how that's not going to take very long before you have that slow downhill slide. And it was well reported in the news what he paid for it. It was roughly $45 billion. And the gross real value, because, he said he would buy it and put himself under contract effectively when it was sort of overvalued. And when everybody took a real close look at it, it was like, this place is worth about $25 billion and you pay 40 for it. Now you've got a scenario where you've got to make more than $1.5 billion a year in profit merely to satisfy the interest payments. So as soon as he signed the papers, that was kind of the beginning of the end. And that's also why he, became really interested in selling blue check marks for $8. He's trying to do anything he can to monetize the platform to keep it alive, which just goes to show you that there's like no tech Jesus in the world that just magically knows the way, or, the Silicon Valley billionaire startup guy that, basically winds up getting a cult following around him. There are no prophets. There is no one that can see the future. They're just taking their best stab at certain things, and they did really well in certain areas, but it doesn't mean they do well in everything. I mean, just because a guy can make an amazing pizza does not mean you want him to do surgery on your foot. I mean, sometimes shit is different.
Well, and I've always been a fan of Musk in the sense that he, one of the things that I've always said about him is that he does things to kind of rattle the whatever industry he's fucking with, right? He got into private, not jets, damn it, rockets, right? And he's like, man, we can make these things land on their own. You guys are being wasteful. And it took a few dozen explosions, but he finally got it to work. And then NASA's like, oh, yeah, we can do that. And it's like, there you go, rattle some fucking cages. Because when you're the only one, when you're NASA and you're the only one, you're like, you get into a status quo. Then he comes out with electric cars. He comes out with the Teslas. And now look at all the goddamn electric cars that are out there and all the hybrids that are out there, right? Because he rattled cages. When people were like, no, you can't do that. And he's like, sure you can, look. And then everyone's like, oh, yeah, we can do that. Absolutely. So right. I appreciate his that cage rattling, because I think that needs to be done. If capitalism is going to be worth the bullshit that we put up with, because I don't believe capitalism is the be all end all that some folks do. But I think that it's one of the better ways, right? And I think it has created a lot of innovation. But if it's going to be worth the bullshit that we put up with.
Yeah, he's showing offline now. R.I.P. Dan.
That shows what happens when you start talking smack about billionaires. You just disappear.
Yeah, Elon Musk just cut your internet
I was gonna,
off.
Right? That was fucking weird. My browser crashed.
Yeah, musked.
He got musked.
Yeah, you got musked.
I said we should start our own Twitter type website, and we should call it Skitter, and then that way when people posted things, it would be Skeets, and then you could be like Skeet.
I really hope your browser crashes again.
Maybe my computer knew the bad joke was coming. He's like, let's try to save him from himself.
Well, speaking of billionaires and depending upon who you talk to and what they attribute to certain people, possibly a trillionaire, follow me down the rabbit hole here. So, Vladimir Putin. Basically, exactly. Basically a mob boss, overseeing an organization that's known to be corrupt, and then using enforcer tactics as far as having people silenced, having people killed, all of the above. It's basically all the hallmarks of a mob boss. He just happens to be in charge of a country. So now he's a Russian mob boss, and Yevgeny Prigozhin's plane was shot down, supposedly by the Russian military, and he was supposed to be on the passenger, or be a passenger on the plane, but it's still not known as of the last time I checked if he was. So Putin goes after Prigozhin. So if he kills his dog and takes his car, we've got all the makings of Yevgeny Wick, except he's got an army.
I would watch the fuck out of that.
Yeah. You shot down my plane.
And killed my dog. Allegedly.
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 As long as it wasn't John Wick's dog.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I wonder if he was even on it, but I mean, he probably was, right? I mean,
most likely.
He was just big dicking it, flying in and out of Moscow to show Putin, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck he was thinking. You know, when the whole Wagner Group thing happened and they started marching in on Moscow and they were taking out tanks and shit like that. Like, you can't back out of that.
Yeah, you saw what happened. Never mind. You're going to have a January 6th situation if you half-ass an insurrection.
Right. You either do it or don't do it. Right.
Yeah.
You can't
march halfway to Moscow and be like, all right, just kidding.
Yeah, right. Oh, now we talked it out. It's like, no, you didn't. You're dead. I mean, everybody, when that happened, they started the stopwatch on dude's life. You know, we all knew that dude was dead.
Considering who you're going up against, you better commit.
Right, exactly.
You're going to end up in a suitcase with a couple of gunshots to the head, and it's going to be claimed to be suicide.
Right.
Shotgun wound to the back of the head.
Right. And then dismembered, chopped up, and put in a suitcase. The guy just was really, he didn't want to live anymore.
Yes, here's the suicide note. That is why I chopped myself up, put myself in a suitcase, and threw myself into the ocean.
Yeah, I couldn't stand what I just done.
Drink a nice hot cup of polonium tea as well.
He committed suicide, but there's 16 bullet holes. Like we said, suicide.
Yeah.
He's not good at it. First time.
Terrible at it. Yeah, it's everybody. Excuse me. Everybody saw that one coming, and Putin has run Russia into the ground. The thing that one of the things that bothers me the most about a lot of that is that, and this is probably because I am a Gen Xer, and I think Robbie and Doug will understand this the most. Growing up, Russia was the bad guy, right? In the 80s. Rambo.
Rocky movies or...
even Rocky, right. Everything. Russia
Red
was
Dawn.
The bad guy. Right there, right?
Die Hard.
And Wolverines. I mean, everything, was Russia's the bad guy. And now you've got quote-unquote patriots that have been led to believe, because, everyone else is indoctrinated and propaganda works on everyone but them. But people have got Putin's back in his invasion on Ukraine because, Hunter Biden and all these Democrats are hiding money and child porn and fucking everything else in Ukraine. So that's why he's doing it, right? He's on this mission from God to go down there.
All right. Hear me out. Okay. So what if a country broke up the U.S. and said, we're taking New York. New York's going to be its own thing. And then the U.S. later tried to take it back. Would that be an evil act?
Depends. Yeah, it depends.
Gonna need more backstory on this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because
so when you break up a country and you start stealing land away, I mean, from their point of view, that's probably a bad thing.
Yeah, Ukraine left. I mean, Ukraine said, "Hey, fuck off. We're not coming back." But I think once a country is formed, it'd be like if Texas seceded, like they keep promising and never deliver on.
Threaten me with a good time.
Right? And then the U.S. started rolling military in. I would say it's a bad thing. Yeah, it's like, hey, if that's
It's still, I see. So it's still an invasion because they deserve their sovereign status.
Right. If a country wants sovereign status, then they should be allowed to have it. They should be able to break away. Texas should be able to break away. I think any state that wants to secede from the Union should be allowed to do it. That's states' rights. And I've learned that I'm kind of a statist only because I believe in small. Federal government is ridiculous. What?
States' rights to what?
States'
rights to what? Yeah, Dan. States' rights to what?
I believe in states' rights to govern themselves independently versus the federal government. I think the federal government should have certain duties and responsibilities and certain laws and things like that. But just like with Colorado doing the whole thing with legalizing weed, and it reminds me of a cat knocking something off of a desk. And the feds were like, don't do it. Colorado's like, meow. They're like, don't do it. Colorado's like, and just knocks it off the thing. And it's not the implosion of Bacchanal level that everyone thought, It really hasn't been a big fucking deal out here. I smell weed a lot in my apartment. Guess what? I smelled weed in every apartment I've ever lived in, in every state I've lived in. So I believe that states should be allowed to run themselves the way they want. And just like capitalism, just like a business, if a state sucks and runs itself into the ground, the Fed should not come in and fix it. It should kind of fail, and then it will change or it will stay failed. And you can say, well, Dan, but if you had, an entire state that just failed, that's going to ripple through the economy of the country. So, yes and no. Look at Europe. Look at the EU. There are countries over there that their dollar ain't worth much, or whatever their currency is, but the EU hasn't collapsed because of it. I don't know. I'm definitely a proponent of smaller government and a huge proponent of who are we? You guys may have remembered I said something about the woman that she's like 94 years old, and I think she's a congresswoman, but she recently gave her daughter power of attorney because, she's 94 years old and can't, take care of herself, but she's still helping to pass legislation for all of us. And I just
Dianne Feinstein?
Yes, I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
And at this point, Biden, what's the little fucking rat fink from Alabama?
The little one or the current one?
The current one.
Yeah.
Still a little.
The current one is Tuberville doing the thing where he's holding up, since he's in the Senate, and the Senate rules have been busted for a while. Used to, at various points in time, everything, you hear the filibuster talked about a lot. And, when most people think about the filibuster, they think about someone standing down on the floor, constantly giving a speech that they're allowed to give, just taking up time so you can't vote on something. Well, it's been a while back, but they basically, someone can threaten to filibuster, and that's all it takes. And that's sort of what Tommy Tuberville is doing, the former coach from Auburn, because obviously that qualifies him for
in Alabama. Yeah.
So, but the little one wound up being
McConnell. That's who I was thinking of. The little rat fink.
McConnell. Yeah.
Oh well,
Just
McConnell
staring off into space.
Right. All those old motherfuckers need to go, dude. All of them.
You had Strom Thurmond that he kept going until he was in his 90s. But it's like,
that's excessive.
that it's Yeah, I believe that at some point, driver's licenses and political offices should have to be qualified. You should have to qualify for it past a certain
Absolutely.
age. You know,
Absolutely on both
you
of
know,
those.
take a test, take something. Well, it's like
How many? Right. Some of these guys, I want to ask them how many stars are on the goddamn American flag. 13.
yeah, and
Which one?
exactly. I mean, but have something in place. Some level of a competency, something. Because hey, it's when people start getting into age-related issues where they experience cognitive decline.
Right.
There are all sorts of associated changes with that. Not merely just not remembering things. You can have
No, absolutely.
people that have certain mental issues that, hey, talk to anyone that's ever been a nurse in a nursing home. You've got some people that once they started having cognitive issues, that it brought out their mean side.
I was
And
just
some of them are
yes,
just, they could have been the sweetest person in the world,
yes.
but then they have some issue and they are the meanest, fucking push people down the stairs and roll over laughing about it motherfuckers you ever saw in your life.
My ex-wife's family dealt with a lot of like strokes, and on her mom's side there was a lot of dementia, Alzheimer's, stuff like that. And I heard stories about some of her relatives, but I remember her mom got a little nasty towards the end, from what I remember, just mean-spirited little comments. And she was one of the sweetest Southern women you'd ever meet, but it was that fucking dementia. I mean, their brains are being eaten from the inside out in a lot of these cases. And that's exactly it, right? So, and you've got somebody like that running the country. And how does somebody who is a multimillionaire, who's 90 years old, how does he have my best interests, a middle class 47-year-old, how does he have my best interest in mind? Like, I just don't see. But the
Well, you
problem,
may get introduced to him and he may not be able to remember your fucking name. Or,
yeah,
think about this, the motherfucker that's in charge of the button, if he's in cognitive decline and
well, fortunately, there's a couple of people that are in charge of the button, so
yeah,
not just one.
but
That's why.
But it's, let's say you have somebody and there is a virtual button. Do you want a mean old motherfucker that can't remember anything, much less understand the consequences of their actions?
I just think that the
Yes.
problem is that right? You've got a bunch of people that they make up the rules for everyone, including themselves. And I think that's the fucked up part, right? Is that everything is being designed to keep them in power and to keep them rich. And the U.S. is a young country as far as the planet is concerned. We're only a couple of 100 years old. And if you look historically, around the 250, most dynasties, which is kind of what we are, only last about 250 to 300 years. And we're there. We've hit that point. And it'll be curious to see where things go over the next 50 years. The idea that the U.S. couldn't collapse, the idea that the U.S. couldn't have major restructuring, or that we couldn't have another civil war, I think is asinine to think. To think that we can't do that. We see things on TV about schools getting hit with rockets and, the streets are just turned to rubble, and we're like, oh, that's terrible. It could happen here, And I know I'm a fucking crazy prepper guy, but still.
It's not that far off. I mean, because think about this. All right. We spend more on defense than anyone. Anyone. As a matter of fact, I would not be shocked that if you took the top 20, and obviously we're number one in that, if you took the top 20 and you added up the budgets of the other 19,
Yeah, we're probably still on top.
We would probably still be on top. So, as far as if you're a country that wants to diminish American influence across the world stage, doing it militarily is impossible.
Yeah,
It's just
right. No.
not going
No.
to happen. And if you actively attack the country, all of these motherfuckers that are arguing, well, we stop arguing and
Yeah.
then we turn our attention to whoever that
Yeah.
is.
It's like a family,
And
right? We can sit and
yeah,
talk shit and do whatever we want, but the minute you come into our yard and talk shit, you are fucked.
exactly.
Just send a couple
Now,
of A10s to your house.
so the only thing that you can do is influence, disinformation, the whole
Mm-hmm.
nine yards. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what you've seen Russia be engaged in over the last 20 years. And then once social media really exploded, that kind of gave them an in. And
Oh, yeah.
anybody that is wondering about the whole Hunter Biden, Ukraine, mysterious server in there that, that was going to make Hillary win and all of the other bullshit. Make no mistake. It's like, I don't care who says what on your favorite news channel. If you
Right.
cannot add that up, something is wrong.
It's so blatantly obvious, then that's the part that makes me mad, right? It's like, guys, really? Come on. First of all politicians are crooked as fuck. And the idea that the fact that they've got us, and I say us encompassing all of Americans, that they've got us into this zero sum game. And a zero sum game, for those who don't know, a zero sum game is when there are two sides, and for one side to win, the other side must lose. And you're thinking, well, duh, Dan, that's most games. Well, yeah, but it's still called a zero sum game, right? Our political system has been created or has not created, it's been steered into this zero sum game where in order for Democrats to win, Republicans have to lose. For Republicans to win, Democrats have to lose. There is no middle ground anymore. It's black or white. And I don't know about you guys, but my life is way too fucking complicated for me to live it black and white and say, I will only make these decisions because they align up with my conservative values. And I will only make these because they align with my liberal values. I take the issue, I look at the issue, and I go, how the fuck do I fix this issue for myself or for whoever, right? But that's not what we're allowed to do anymore. I saw people, like laughing and joking when Trump won about, oh, look at all those fucking liberals and Dems crying, ha ha ha, look at them. Really? You're celebrating the fact that they're upset. I just think that's a fucked up thing. Like,
Yeah.
there are people I don't like in the world, but I don't celebrate them being sad.
That's fucked up on multiple levels. And we can also turn around and flip that coin. Like when Barack Obama got elected, you saw Republican fervor reach a level that it had never seen before, and that kind of steamrolled into the modern era. They had someone to go up against, but at the same time, it's like, not all of the ideas from any one side or another are bad ideas. And the way our election cycles have gone over the past several years, listen, I mean, if somebody gets, 56% of the vote, that's considered a landslide.
Yeah.
And, and that's 56%.
And that should be telling, right?
Yeah,
that our country really
that's an F. I
Yeah.
mean, if in school, if you learn 56% of something, you failed. So that let's say you got 56% of people to agree on a president. That's still 44% of the population that chose the other guy. And usually the way this, those things go, you vote for your guy and your guy lost. Well, there you feel a certain hurt, you feel a certain damage,
Right.
that's
Right.
so it's
And
like
that shouldn't be celebrated.
right.
I mean,
You
sports teams don't even do that, right?
I mean, having half, but you're looking at having half of the country pissed off at any one time.
Sure, right.
Because
Yeah,
most of
for
these
years.
things that get decided, realistically, 56% is a landslide because most things go 51-49.
I was just getting ready to say I've seen like 50.8 to it's
Exactly.
like in the points. But if you've got two opposing teams in the Super Bowl and one of them wins, you don't see the other team being like, ha ha, fuck you, ha ha, cry, snowflake. They hug, they congratulate each other, blah blah blah. But then in politics, these pundits or people who think they're fucking pundits are like, oh yeah, cry snowflake. Oh yeah, fuck you conservatives. It's like that's the problem. Look at what they've done. They've created this environment where we are combative over who's in office.
Right.
And dude, they're all going to fuck us.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's making the Russian influence campaign from outside so effective to the point where I mean, it's like, there is a group of people in Congress that actively support Russia because their information campaign has legs. They've more or less treated them as a special interest group. Think of them as an NRA or an ASPCA or any one of those other organizations that is able to exert political influence. And make no mistake about it, when you see people voting against funding for Ukraine or anything else, that is a direct result of that Russian influence in our current political situation.
Yeah, and that's another one that I've seen, and you know how people like to pop off the mouth. Somebody be like, oh yeah, they're not going to be able to finish the potholes on whatever road. And people are like, yeah, but we can put $725 million into Ukraine. And it's like, really? You care about that? How about all of the Middle East wars? How about all of the fucking wars that Bush and the Republicans put us into? You don't seem to care about any of those. I'm sure those had no political reasons. It was all about freedom. They needed.
It was the weapons of mass destruction that they finally found and destroyed.
It's that Duncan Hines yellow cake mix.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Duncan Hines yellow cake mix.
That's what they were looking for. And the frosting was in a different country. They had to invade that country.
Yeah, right, to get that. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a violation of export laws.
Biological. This is the best biological warfare I've ever tasted. I want yellow cake. That's weird.
And I'm not ashamed to say it. It's like when they started talking about suitcase nukes, which I was doubtful about suitcase nukes, but I wasn't terribly doubtful about weapons of mass destruction if you had them in the hands of a guy like Saddam. The problem is it was basically an influence campaign by one particular Iraqi a-hole who I can't remember what his name was. And he came over here selling the story, and even though it was really easy to see through and it was easily disproven when the CIA and the FBI and other people started looking at it, people grabbed a hold of that and then walked everything that guy was saying that they knew to be false out to the American people, Congress, the Senate, the whole nine yards, so they could get basically, an authorization from the legislative branch so they could go in and wage war. And I remember when that whole thing was going on, hey, I was watching the news every day. And when they hit we found aluminum tubes, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I got sold a fucking bill of goods, and so did everybody else.
But aluminum tubes, Doug.
Exactly. We
Aluminum.
went. Yeah, and that was, they made a big, huge deal about it. That these aluminum tubes could be used to process a whole bunch of shit, and it was just fucking aluminum tubes because they were looking for anything that would validate their initial premise, which was
Right.
sold to them by an Iraqi who basically what he wanted was he wanted the U.S. to invade Iraq and he wanted the U.S. to install him as Iraq's leader. That's what the whole thing was about.
And we like oil and we like keeping our dirty laundry secret, right? And those, I know you guys know this, but I mean, we've been meddling in the Middle East since like the fucking late 40s, 50s.
Yeah, pretty much after World War II.
Mm-hmm. Keeping Russia busy. If you could keep war going on somewhere other than your own country to keep people, one, busy, and two, to keep, Lockheed and these countries or these companies making gajillions of dollars, then you're going to do that, So what do you think about, let me ask you a question since we're on this in this rabbit hole, the folks that say that 9/11 was an inside job, right? That's coming up here in a few weeks. My personal opinion is that I don't believe it was an inside job per se, but I find it very hard to believe that with all of the intelligence we have out there and the things, we can find the aluminum tubes, but we can't stop people from stealing a couple of 747s and crashing them into fucking buildings. Like that just seems sketchy to me. And I know there are people that say there's no fucking way our government would allow that to happen. Really? Are you sure about that? Because I don't know that I'm willing to say that.
No, actually.
And and I've seen all
a red laser dot just appeared on my
Yeah,
forehead.
right.
So I will say that
I do not believe
the official story is probably what happened.
All right.
You know what?
Yes,
If you don't think the government will do fucked up stuff, just look up the Tuskegee experiment,
There you go.
and
Yes.
you'll realize that they don't give a fuck about people.
No.
Because they believe in this greater good theory, right? And some of the most, Hitler himself, they believed that there was a greater good, that the suffering they were causing didn't matter because it was for the greater good of another people, right? And when you start to think like that, nothing is off the table, right? The Crusades, you can go all the way back to the fucking Crusades. They killed thousands, hundreds of thousands of fucking people that weren't Christian, but it was okay because they were doing God's work. It was for the greater good,
Yeah, I think the Bible says, "Thou shalt kill."
If they're not Christians, yeah. So
Yeah,
here's
thou shall not kill unless they're not Christian.
Unless they're not Christians, and then fuck them up, which is interesting because I saw something the other day about, and I don't remember how it runs now, but basically they were talking about Jesus and, where he would have existed in the world at the time and what language he would have spoke. And I can't remember what it was now. But in that language, the word for God would have been Allah, right? And so I was like, wait a minute. So I went and dug into it, and it adds up. It does. It adds up. That
Well, it's three branches. It's like if you study it at all, Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism, and then Islam is
It's
an
just
offshoot
DLC
of
for the Bible. Yeah.
It's just an offshoot of Christianity. So you've got people that don't realize that all three of these religions roll up to the same God, regardless of what you want to call it.
Yep. And that's what this guy, he was a Muslim, and that's basically what he was saying, was that we're all brothers, we're all cousins, we're all this. It all adds up. It's just, three people went out into the fucking desert and wrote their own account of it, and now you've got what you've got. And yet,
well, it was like the Quran. It includes most of the Bible and then some extra.
Yeah.
It's not even like a completely different thing. It's just like Jesus was a prophet, but he wasn't the Messiah.
Right. I was going to
Muhammad
say,
was.
you believe in Jesus, right? They believe he was a prophet. They just don't think that he was the second coming of Christ and all that, or the
Yeah.
second coming of God or whatever. Right. So, and it just kills me the way that folks will fight that shit until they're, bug-eyed and spitting at you. They're
I
all
like to
evil.
pick and choose features from different religions and make up my own.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how the Bible is built. It's a choose your own
You play it like
Bible.
you play religion like Gary's Mod. You just install different stuff from the workshop. And
Yeah.
Just install the "Don't Be an Asshole" mod and call it a day.
I don't think that exists. I don't think that exists in any religious text.
That's my religious, basically the basics of it. Don't be a dick, right? And if you look at religion and you get rid of the can't eat shellfish and women should be stoned and all that shit, all religion really does kind of come back down to that: is don't be a dick to your fellow man. Be a decent human. Try to do right. But some people seem to have a difficulty doing that.
Reading comprehension is hard.
Maybe that's all it is. It's just reading comprehension. Well, I look at it this way. If you were to say that you were going to set your wife on fire because she didn't love you, that would be wrong. But God says he's going to send you to hell and you're going to burn in flames forever if you don't love him. And that's not wrong. And that confuses me. I'm confused by that.
I only hurt you because I love you.
I don't get it. So like Satan's supposed to be bad, but he's punishing the bad people or something?
Right. It's all very confusing. It's very, very confusing.
So we're like a scapegoat.
God damn it.
That was funny on KPR.
I hate it here.
No, you don't. You're just pissed that he came up with it and you didn't.
Yeah. Usually, yes.
All right. Well, that was fun.
KFC in India has a biryani bucket with fried chicken in it. So
I would eat that.
I ain't got it. I chased after enough girls in my life. I went to enough dances. I got hurt enough. I don't want to get hurt no more.